Welcome into the Boston Sports Summit, and we have kind of a Debbie Downer edition today. As you can see, it was a Super Bowl stunner on Sunday. Not a game I think any of us predicted, not a game I think any of us wanted. As you probably saw my show last week, we had all winners. We had the Pats winning the game. I mean, how could we not? We're Pats fans, right? Again, I had my prediction being the Pats winning by 7, 24-17. And the final score, obviously, was 29-13. Oop, not Wildcat final. But, again, it's it was an interesting game, to say the least. I mean, ultimately, I want to start off by saying what happened. What happened to this team right here? I think it's simple. I think the clock struck midnight. I think the Patriots turned into the proverbial pumpkin, and ultimately, it was curtains for the Pats. That's what happened. The Cinderella story that we were riding along all season long, a team that won a total of 8 games in 2 years, all of a sudden found themselves in the Super Bowl. Who doesn't love that, right? Who doesn't love that type of experience, that type of show? And the funniest part about the whole thing was the whole country was rooting against us. They're like, no, you don't get this. No, you shouldn't be here. No, you had this, you had that. And don't worry, I'm going to talk about all the trolls later on. So stick around for that. But, this game, as I said, going into the Super Bowl, was decided in the trenches. I had immense respect for Seattle and their defensive line. I also had immense respect for our defensive line. And at the end of the day, it was about who could get home. They did, and we didn't. It was decided right then and there. And then Seattle's defense, their DBs could literally fly around and do whatever the hell they wanted. That's what happened in this game. They came out, smacked us in the mouth, and they really didn't overexert themselves by going for it. They weren't one of those Dan Campbell-like teams that looked at what happened with Sean Payton the week before and said, no, we're going to score a touchdown. We're going to go for it on 4th down in the red zone. They didn't. And as I have the team stats right here, you look at it, they only beat us in total yards by 4 yards. They had 335 to 331, but if you see further down, second to last, neither team went for it on 4th down, which is crazy. Ultimately, the Patriots threw for more yards, 252 to 194. The Seahawks outgained us, 141 to 79. We committed all 3 turnovers in the game. We actually committed less penalties, but the final 2 penalties for Seattle were on not just our final drive of the game, but the final drive of the game. So take that for what it's worth, okay, big deal. It's 29-13. We were 100% in the red zone. They were 1 for 4. We actually, surprisingly, had a better 3rd down conversion ratio, going 6 for 15 to their 4 for 16. As I mentioned, neither team went for it on 4th down, but at the end of the day, one of the most important stats in football is time of possession. Seattle had 33 minutes and 11 seconds to our 26 minutes and 49 seconds. So again, it was exactly, the type of game where if you held on to the football, if you had success running it, and you could get to the quarterback, you were probably going to win this game. And that's exactly what happened. I give all the respect to Seattle. I am pissed off that they didn't throw out one of, I want to say it was Josh Jobe, for punching Stephon Diggs right in front of the referee and having the late shove on Stephon out of bounds. Again, at the end, like, not to say that was gonna decide the game. Like, all of a sudden, the reason why Seattle won was because of that non-call. No, I'm not. Please, you know me better than that. I'm not gonna sit here and whine over that. Trust me, I'm a big jail the refs guy, but I'm also not stupid enough to say that decided the outcome of the game. Not even close. The refs, 7 penalties, and 2 of them came on the final drive of the game when it was, totally not in the realm of possibility of us coming back. So what? 5 penalties all game. I'm okay with that. There should have been 6, maybe 7 with that right there, but beside the point. Again, something that I do every week. I didn't want to do it because I knew it was going to be bad. But again, got to stick to it. Got to do the game day grades, right? Starting with Christian Gonzalez and Craig Woodson. If I'm telling you, if we somehow snuck that game out, it was going to be because of them. Christian Gonzalez shows you why he should be the highest paid corner in NFL history. He balled out. That full body extension he had on the Shaheed tip and the near interception at the goal line on the slant route from JSN that he just undercut and had the ball in his hands. He was astounding. Honestly, probably the best football player on the field. I know Kenneth Walker rushed for over 100 yards, but it was kind of one of those where, I don't know, if they gave the MVP to Christian Gonzalez, I wouldn't be upset. It's like, yeah, he kind of was, and then even Craig Woodson, 4th round safety, has been playing lights out. The guy was all over the field, making tackles, getting into passing lanes, making it tough for the receivers. So those 2 get A's by far. As for B's, I gave B's to Milton Williams and Matt Collins. Milton Williams did come up with a sack. He was getting to Donald, especially in the first half, but ultimately just couldn't get the job done. He couldn't get the 2 sacks that I was kind of hoping for with him, if not even more. He was I thought he was disruptive, but Sam was still able to get out of it. And even though Darnold begged New England's defense to intercept him, not once, not twice, at least 3 times from what I saw, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. Kind of the way I say with hockey and the NHL playoffs, you don't notice puck luck in the regular season, but then in the Stanley Cup playoffs, puck luck is a real thing. The puck bounces your way one night and it doesn't the next. Everything can change on a dime. So that's kind of what those interceptions or near interceptions felt like. It just, the ball wasn't bouncing our way. We had our hands on it and it just fell out. Or, the ball bounced out and our player was 1 foot away from being able to make that interception, stuff like that. So I felt like Milton Williams was disruptive, but at the end of the day, he didn't get the numbers. He didn't force an interception. So again, good game, but not great. And then Matt Collins. Matt Collins has always been reliable. I thought he was very good run blocker all season. Reliable for Drake May. Drake May throws it high. He goes up and gets it. That catch between 3 Seattle defenders I thought was amazing. Hell of a throw, hell of a catch. And then obviously the deep ball for the first touchdown for the Patriots. And look, At least we didn't get shut out. Was phenomenal. Just to track that ball, see it into his hands, and then hold on to it as he's going to the ground. Good game by Matt Collins. And now for C's. C's, I gave Robert Spillane, Christian Barmore. So for them, they couldn't find success against the run game. Stopping Kenneth Walker is what I'm trying to say here. Kenneth Walker didn't have the best game going up the middle, so good credit there, to the middle of the defense. But Spillane he seemed to have to step slow. He, just kept missing by that much, and he was a crucial guy as part of our run defense. Same with Christian Barmore. I say with him as the run defense, but also him getting home. He was lined up on Anthony Bradford multiple times. He was lined up on their center a number of times. And here I am preaching and saying how these are the guys you need to go after. This is the worst guy you could think of. The worst right guard in the league. I'm being hyperbolic, but you know what I'm saying. And yet it didn't work out. It didn't happen like that. And that's what bothers me. That's what bothers me about this. So average games for them. And now for the worst of the worst. So first, we got to go with the letter D. Get a D+, D-. Drake May, Josh McDaniels. I think that's extremely fair to say. Listen, did Drake May have a great postseason? Not by any stretch of the imagination. The one thing I will say, though, is at least he completed over 60% of his passes in the Super Bowl. Right? Listen, he's gone against 4 top 5 defenses. And, that's hard to do. No quarterback has beaten 3 top 5 defenses in a single postseason, let alone 4. So, Drake May, did he lead us to the Super Bowl? Not necessarily, depending on how you look at it. I would think that he made plays in key moments that helped us get there. I think that's fair to say. But was he the main factor? Obviously not. Obviously not. That was our defense through and through. That was Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, Christian Gonzalez, Robert Spillane. Marcus Jones, Kaylavon Chason, Carlton Davis, Craig Woodson. I mean, the list goes on. I could name the whole defense, basically. But those were essentially the guys that helped us get to where we were, which is the Super Bowl. After winning 8 games in the span of 2 seasons. Here we were. And so, with Drake May, who I will talk about in a little bit, because after I give out the grades, I'm going to talk about who's to blame. So that's going to wrap up, and we're going to start talking about who's to blame in the next 5 minutes. So stay tuned for that. But, Drake May, tough 3 quarters. And then all of a sudden he lights it up in the 4th quarter and somehow has a Super Bowl record to his name by throwing for more yards in a single quarter with 235. As I showed the team stats, we threw for 252, and 235 of them came in the 4th quarter alone when the game was 12-0. So, I mean, it was kind of interesting to say the least. So, but yeah, Drake May, D, Josh McDaniels is the other guy. I mean, the play calling with Josh, I just want to sit there and go, what are we doing? We were in a lot of 11 personnel. We ran the jumbo package once, gained 20 yards, and then it was nowhere to be found for the rest of the game. So, just what was the mindset? What was going on? And there was no even adjustments, it felt like. It felt like we came out in the start of the second half after that ridiculous halftime show and just was like, oh, we're going to do the same exact thing all over again? Like, come on. Like, seriously? Seriously? And it sucked. It sucked. So those two guys get D's. And then lastly, F, the offensive line. And yes, I will specifically call out the left side of the line. That's primarily the biggest issue that we face right now. You know, with Will Campbell and Jared Wilson, they did not have good games. Now, Next Gen Stats saying 14 pressures by Will Campbell, I thought was absurd. You know, I watched that game back, and I'm sorry. He had a lot of pressures, but not 14. You know, like, what are we doing here? So, yeah, it was just a horrendous game. Drake May, you could tell, was jittery. You know, he was nervous. There was a lot of emotions going on with him. You know, not to mention the whole shoulder and now having to deal with no protection at all. You know, I heard, I think it was David Andrews tell a story about how Tom Brady, it could be David, it could be somebody else, so forgive me for this, but I want to say Tom Brady was the quarterback in this situation. It might have been Brock Purdy. Hell, you know, somebody. Regardless, the quarterback of the team gave the offensive line cars, and they thought it was great, this, that, and the other. Well, it turned out they gave him a car, and he paid for a 1-year lease. So it's like, come Christmas time, again, you know, can we re-up that? No. So, yeah, I just thought that was pretty funny. But that to me says, like, all right, Drake May, hey, yeah, I got you guys the gift card or gift certificate. Yeah, can I have that back? No, he wouldn't do that. But just, you know, for the horrendous performance, nah, again, he wouldn't do that. No one would do that. It's just, you know, thought it would be funny. But yeah, so moving on now to the next kind of, who is to blame? I think that's a great question. Who is to blame for this? And I think there are a lot of factors. I think, as I mentioned earlier, our defensive line could not get home. The amount of times we broke containment and Sam Darnold was able to move up and move around. Now, again, he's not a mobile guy, but the fact that he was able to get out of those situations because of the broken containment is part of the reason why he, you know, picked us apart. And they were able to move the ball down the field. Not to mention, couldn't stop the one guy we needed to stop, which was Kenneth Walker. I understand part of the game plan was we got to focus on JSN. And yeah, obviously you need to focus on him. But if you give Sam Darnold the ability to feel comfortable in the pocket because Kenneth Walker is running all over you, then he's going to pick you apart. He's going to light you up because you're not stopping the run. And Kenneth Walker running for over 100 yards. You know, it's not like you're playing Thurman Thomas and the Bills and the K-Gun offense in 91, where Belichick's whole point was let Thurman Thomas get 100 yards. Stop everything else. That's part of it. I think another massive part is obviously the offensive line. Even Devin Witherspoon, after the game, was saying how they teed up on some of our guys and how they were able to read us based on the alignment, the slight alignment of our offensive line. You know, I think Witherspoon, I don't think he called out anybody specifically, but, you know, on X going into it, somebody pointed out, you know, when the Patriots would go through the A gap, Mike Owenu had a slight lean to his left. Going outside, he'd have a slight lean to his right, or he'd sit back when he was pulling. Like, I get that every single player in the NFL has to tell. They do. It's natural. How do you think Ray Lewis was so good? How do you think Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were so good just from studying film? It wasn't hard to figure out. But you also have to figure out that, hey, you do this. People can figure that out on you if they haven't already. And so, according to Devin Witherspoon, they had a feeling of what was coming. They had a read on us. And that doesn't mean, you know, our entire offensive line sucks or, you know, hey, listen, we got here at the end of the day. But there's a reason why I gave the offensive line an F. You know, Drake May officially became the most sacked quarterback in postseason history. He had 5, 5, 5, and 6. You know, 21 sacks in 4 games. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And if the Patriots have any shot of getting back to the situation and winning a Super Bowl with Drake May and Mike Vrabel, we got to make sure that that offensive line is stout. That we have our guys that are absolute bruisers. And also, can these guys have off games? Of course. You know, look at the AFC Championship. Denver had the number 1 offensive line after 18 weeks. And look at how we manhandled them. We made Jarrett Stidham freak out a number of times. So, and could the snow have been a part of it? Could the weather have been a part of it? Sure, absolutely. But I don't think it was as big of a part as just Denver had a bad game. You know, for whatever reason it was, they weren't prepared for what Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, Caleb Von Chason were doing. And so I think, too, that that's an issue. Will Campbell, you know, I talked about him giving the grade for the F. And listen, as much as he gave up all those pressures, you know, I've heard from the low of 8, and obviously I mentioned the high of 14, which I find absolutely absurd and ridiculous. But even still, if you think that 14 and then you hear 8, you're like, oh, see, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't 14 bad. Yeah, well, 8 is still a lot. And 8 would have been a career high for Will Campbell. His previous career high was 5. 5 pressures in a single game. But the also thing you have to take into account, which is not me bailing him out by any stretch of the imagination. I don't do that. I don't like doing that. But at the same time, I also have to take in everything, you know, which is, dude was playing off a torn MCL. He was still dealing. It was completely torn. And he got healed up just enough. And they let him play. You know, which, looking back, I would have liked to have seen if, hey, not just for the Super Bowl, but could he have been held out longer? And could we have still gotten further? Could we have had Vidarian Lowe, who was playing pretty decently. Not great, but decently. Decently enough to get by. And I think it would have been interesting to have Vidarian Lowe in this game. Again, not to say he would have been better but maybe he could have been, And so he's dealing with that. He's also dealing with the fact that he's a 22-year-old rookie going against grown-ass men. In this game, in the Denver game, in the Houston game, and the Charger game. I wasn't a huge fan when after the Charger game, when he was like, there's $300 million, on the defensive line there, trying to say that, oh, well, there's a reason why I didn't do so well, and it's because they were that much better, this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, but come on, kid. And so I don't fault him for being a rookie. I get it. But I hope he understands where he's at, what just happened, and how to move on. How to be that guy. Right? How to learn. And even Teron Armstead, all pro, has said publicly, Will, come and work out with me. Let's go. We'll get you lifting. We'll get you moving. We'll get your technique right. And then you're going to be an all-pro. So I hope he takes him up on that offer. And I hope that Will Campbell gets it done. So it's just a few things that I look at. And I'm like, okay, did Will Campbell suck? Yeah. But, here's some other factors that we need to think about. Okay? And yeah, I'll join the fight and be like, yeah, he didn't play well. I think that's fair to say. But I also look at the other stuff too. And then moving on, Drake May. Drake May to blame. Dude had a bum shoulder. I didn't want to admit it. I was hoping that the 2 weeks were going to be, healed up. He was good to go. He could still move it. Nothing. He didn't need anything. Sadly, it sounds like he did. Sadly, it sounds like he got his shoulder shot up. He said it himself. He's like, listen, I got my shoulder shot up. And I sit there go, okay, like his shoulder was numb. I think it's part of what he said. And I looked at that and I'm like, what do you mean your shoulder was numb? Which means he got it shot up, which means that he wasn't 100% healthy. And because he wasn't 100% healthy, tells me that something's been wrong, something's been going on, and that he wasn't the same because of that. You're telling me that a healthy Drake May, who completed 72% of his passes, misses that throw to Austin Hooper, lays it up there like a friggin' duck on his first interception? I know they ruled the Seattle touchdown pick six. It was, but it's one of those, like, the ball got bad up in the end. Whatever. I'm not attributing to that. The first interception that he laid up as a duck, it was the best deep ball thrower in the NFL this year. Most accurate deep ball thrower in the NFL this year. You're telling me that if he could actually feel his shoulder and that it wasn't numb and that he didn't need to get it shot up and that it was 100% healthy, that he would still do the exact same thing, miss these throws by that much? I don't think so. I don't think so. And which leads me now to, I think, one of the biggest questions is, what's my faith in this kid? What's your faith in this kid? Do you have faith in Drake May? Comment down below. What are your thoughts are? You can hit me up on Instagram, X, and YouTube. Yeah, of course I still have faith in the kid. He threw for 4,400 yards, completed 72% of his passes. Yeah, he did it against the 32nd ranked. I don't care. I don't care. because when we played the Atlanta Falcons in the regular season, he torched them. At least in the first half, and then the second half got to him. But otherwise, he was torching the number one pass defense in the NFL. He came up and we beat Cleveland while getting sacked 5 times against Myles Garrett. The defenses, some of them were easy. Some of them had their strengths. But he was still able to do stuff. Throwing 3 touchdowns against the Texans. That floater, that beauty to Kayshon Boutte. Come on. I have faith that this kid can do it. I do. And I think the other part of it too is Josh McDaniels. I would argue that while Drake May learned a lot this year, his first year under McDaniels, I'm not sure if he had the full playbook at his disposal. I think there were still things that Josh is like, listen, you're still learning, you're still, trying to figure out the offense, trying to figure out what we're doing, this, that, and the other, moving pieces. And I would look at it being like, all right, now he's at a spot where he's going to take more responsibility, which is only going to improve his standing. Drake May right now is not Tom Brady. He's been in the league for 2 years and is in the Super Bowl. Okay? He still has a lot to learn. As long as we're not running the organization like Cincinnati, I think we're going to be fine. Because how they've treated Joe Burrow is a damn shame. Yeah, he's got his 2 stud receivers, but he's got no offensive line, and now he's talking about how this just isn't fun for him anymore. If we don't give Drake May a solid offensive line, and guys are getting home and all these types of things, then we could see the same thing 5 years from now. But right now, as it stands, I like Drake May. I have faith. I do. I think Drake May is going to be one of, if not the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL. They just put out the MVP odds. Drake May was 3rd behind Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I don't know why people are still rating Lamar Jackson like he's this all-pro quarterback. I'm sorry, he's not. I don't know if it's his scheme or what, but right now, Lamar Jackson is so far down the list. Now, he's not, 15th in the league or 20th in the league, but in terms of like the top quarterbacks in the NFL right now, I've got him 10th, 11th? Let's see. Drake May, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen. How can I rate Joe Burrow? Patrick Mahomes, we're playing at Kansas City next year. When are we playing at Kansas City? Is Mahomes even going to be back by then? And if he's not, how's that going to affect him? Mahomes, as much as I can't stand him, he's a hell of a player. I'm just trying to run through my head right now of all the what I rate. You know what? I think I would rate Brock Purdy ahead of Lamar Jackson, strictly because he's been able to accomplish stuff. And might be schematically, as we saw how good Mac Jones was for a brief minute under Kyle Shanahan's system. But again, I just look at it like, at the end of the day, I got faith in May. May's our guy. And as long as as an organization, we're not doing stuff to F with him, I think he's going to be fine. And it sounds like McDaniels is going to be back for next season, which, say what you want about his play calling. I already did. I told you. I gave him a D. But having that consistency, I think is going to be huge for Drake. I think it's going to work out for him. And so, another question that I had with this is I'm replaying my show last week. I'm replaying the fact that myself, Pete, and Divish, we're all talking about how it's going to be a close game, but we think the Pats are going to win. You know, we think the Pats are going to get home to Sam Darnold. We're going to make Sam Darnold see ghosts, this, that, and the other, and the Pats going to win. Should we have seen this coming? I think in some respects we did. We just wouldn't say it out loud. You know, because whenever you make a take, you're always going to sit there and focus on this is what it's going to take. You know, listen, I respect Seattle. I respect their defense. I respect what they've done on offense. But at the end of the day, I just think that the Cinderella story is going to last. And then you get the tunnel vision. You know, you start looking at it like that. You start looking at all the benefits of what the Patriots have done, you know, and how they got there. Okay, yeah, they kicked Seattle kicked the 49ers ass. They beat the Rams, and if it wasn't for that muff punt, how close would that game have been in the NFC Championship game? But even still, you know, I look at this and I'm like, maybe we should have, you know, and I'm not saying that Pete or Divish didn't see it coming. Hell, not for nothing. I was kind of keeping that all bottled up, you know, as the week later got on. I'll be honest with you, I started getting like more and more. Are we really going to do this? You know, is this really going to happen? You know, because the way the media was talking about Seattle and this, that, and the other, yeah, I started to get doubts. And sure enough, the doubts came true. You know, but again, it's not like I was going to back off my take and be like, oh, well, maybe Seattle could do this. Like, no, I'm a Pats fan through and through. I'm going to pick my Pats every single time, you know, at least in the playoffs. Unless it's like, you know, again, you got the 85 Bears coming to town and, or, you know, the 95 Cowboys or whatever, right? But even still, or the 2000s Ravens defense. But again, I look at this like it was a tough game. You know, it was one of those situations where, once again, our defense was keeping the Pats in it, but it just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. And yeah, I think we all did, but I can speak for myself when I say I don't think I wanted to admit it, you know, because I was so hell-bent on Sam Darnold seeing ghosts. You know, I can't believe we live in a freaking world where Sam Darnold and Nick Foles are Super Bowl champions. Like, that's insane to me. And I do feel bad for Sam because ESPN should not have aired that live. The whole I'm seeing ghost bit shouldn't have done that. I think that was in bad taste, and that's what affected Sam Darnold in his career. Him playing for the Jets, everything going on like that. And you know, the fallout of this game I think is interesting because Mike Vrabel said something really interesting in his post game when talking about getting this Super Bowl experience. Take a listen.
Well, it's only valuable if we understand what it takes and what we're going to need to do to improve. And if we don't do that, then it won't have been very valuable. We had a really, really good year, and one that I'm proud of. But in this game, I don't think is a reflection of our year. I mean, we lost, and we were beat. We were beat, out-coached and outplayed, and give them credit.
Yeah, you got to give him credit. That's number one. Number two, that very first thing that he said when asked about gaining this Super Bowl experience, if you don't learn from it, then it's useless. I love that because that is so true. Because how you look at it is number one, how you got there. Not just X's and O's, not just that, the defense, led us all the way. No. It's the fact that you got there because you were a team. And now when you got to the Super Bowl, that's when everything kind of just, our defense had a nine, held them to 9-0, held them to 1 for 4 in the red zone. Okay. Like they were on top of their game. It was just our offense. But what this tells me, which is why I have so much hope, is that they saw the game and they understood, hey, we struggled on our offensive line. We struggled with our defensive line being able to get home. We didn't blitz enough. We didn't put pressure on Sam Darnold. We couldn't stop Kenneth Walker. We've dealt with all these injuries. We dealt, what do we do with our wide receivers? Do we need a number one wide receiver where guy's going to get open, guy's going to get double teamed? Has some of these players done enough? And I think they're looking at that right now and learning from this experience. Learning, okay, we got to make sure that we keep Drake May upright and give him as much time as humanly possible to stand in that pocket and make throws. Because that is first and foremost. You found the head coach. We have our quarterback. We have our head coach. We have our quarterback. Do you know how hard that is in the NFL? To have those two pieces? Once you have those, then you build off from that. And you can. And defensively, I don't want to say you're set, but you're almost kind of there. You're almost pretty much set with defense. I think you could use a legit edge, a guy that's going to take all of that, all of that pressure, right? That defenses are going to look at and say, let's say Max Crosby, for example. We go out, we get Max Crosby. Great, right? So, offensive line coaches and offensive coordinators are going to be looking at our defensive line going, okay, well, we're going to have to stop Max Crosby first and foremost. Then we got to focus on Milton Williams. Then we got to go focus on Christian Barmore. And if we re-sign Caleb on Chason, then we got to go protect Chason, right? We got to, if somebody's going to beat us, Chason's going to beat us. Not Crosby, not Williams, not Barmore, right? So they got to do that. They got to go make sure that we can solidify our offensive line, which doesn't look great, in terms of like the free agency market. According to some, it looks like it's going to be a very subpar free agent market. So that's a little worrisome. But as long as they learn, I love that because that is so damn true. And I think they have. And I think they are. I think they are learning. And to me, that is huge. Now, the fact that we are a division winner, we're going to have a tougher schedule. Okay? It's bound to happen. We had arguably the easiest schedule. Why do you think I predicted us to win 12 games in June, as I explained last week to Pete and Divish? It was because I looked at the rosters and I'm like, listen, as long as our guys play at least average or up to par, we should win a lot of games. And we did. We won 14 of them. And then went on to win 3 more on our way to the Super Bowl. But we are going to have a tougher schedule because we are a division winner. And the funny thing is, his free agency hasn't even hit yet. The new league calendar hasn't even started yet. The draft hasn't even come yet. And I just love being the villain. I do. It's fantastic. Why? Because when you turn on the television, when you turn on ESPN, when you turn on FS1 or any of the sports stations, Good Morning NFL Network, Good Morning Football, when you turn those on, what do you hear? Do you hear, oh, Seattle this, Seattle that? Or do you hear, Drake May sucks, Will Campbell sucks, this team is now facing a tougher schedule, they're schedule merchants, they're going to go on to win, no more than 5 or 6 games next year. It's all going to be trash. Which I love. I love it. Keep giving me that ammunition because it just shows me that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. It is 3 freaking days since the Super Bowl, and it's already the Patriots suck. Why? Because they hate us. And I love it. This is why I'm a Pats fan, is because you guys will constantly talk crap. You will constantly say that, oh, Seattle this, Seattle that. And it's like, do you really think you can hurt me after what happened on Sunday? Please. I lived through Aaron Boone's home run. I lived through the 2007 18-1. I lived through Mario Manningham. I lived through Nick Foles. I lived through the 2019 Boston Bruins losing to the St. Louis Blues, as I've said a number of times on this show, how Jordan Binnington sold his soul to win that series. I've watched the Celtics lose in 2010 because Kendrick Perkins got hurt in Game 6. I've seen the Celtics lose in 22 or 23. Regardless, when we lost to Golden State after having what was it, 3 games to 2 lead? Okay? I've seen heartbreak. And to have this miracle season, to have something where it's wildly unexpected that we were playing these top 5 defenses and somehow still made it out with our quarterback throwing under 60%, and we still made it all the way to the Super Bowl with arguably a legitimate chance to win this game a handful of times. They hate us because they ain't us. No, people, it's so fantastic. Like, I love this stuff because it just goes to show how people hate Boston. They hate us. And it's awesome. Just come on, keep giving it to me. Because you have all these Jets fans, you have all these Bills fans, you have all these other fans out here trolling and saying, give me your tears, Patriot fans, you frauds, you schedule merchants, you phonies. Remind me, have the Bills won a Super Bowl ever? When was the last time the Jets won? Or hell, when was the last time the Jets were in a Super Bowl? We've been in a Super Bowl in 5 straight decades. We have the most Super Bowl appearances in NFL history. And yet, you want to sit there and say that, oh, it sucks to suck, you Patriots fans, you frauds. And you know what? There are videos circulating of Pats fans leaving at 19-0. Now, for the amount of money that you're paying to go and sit at a Super Bowl, like, yeah, I'm not leaving whether my team's down 7-0, 3-0, or 100-0. My ass is firmly planted into that seat until the clock strikes 000. Otherwise, lest we forget, the Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. Did their fans sit through that torture, that buzzsaw that was the Philadelphia Eagles team when the Eagles had a 40-7 lead in that game? No. They left in the third quarter. And yet, we're the ones being called frauds. And yet, all the other fans out there saying, oh, hey, the team that came back from 28-3, how soon they forget. You bums. Don't you realize that this is Drake May's second year ever? And that was Tom Brady's 16th when he did that? You don't think that man has seen some stuff, knows some things, and that's why we were able to do what we did? Oh, wait, who was our head coach? That's right, Bill Belichick. And trust me, I'm going to talk about him in just a minute. But this just gets to my thoughts. I mean, this has been my thoughts since I've seen this garbage. Because I look at this and think to myself, you people really want just to see us fail. And I relish in that because we live inside your heads. We have so much real estate in your heads because deep down, you know that we have our next head coach and quarterback while your teams are still trying to figure out who their offensive coordinator, who their punter is, all of that garbage. You don't even have a competent quarterback, at least most of you. And then with the Bills fans, you get to say, oh, we got Josh Allen. Yeah? Has Josh Allen been to a Super Bowl? Not even close. And you lost to Denver because Josh Allen was a freaking cowboy and just fumbling the ball left and right. Yeah, Drake May did the same thing in the same round, but CJ Stroud was that much worse. And yet Drake May still made 3 excellent throws to Diggs, Douglas, and Booty. And that's why we beat Houston. Otherwise, all the other fans out there, it feels nice. It feels nice to know that we still have so much real estate in your heads that deep down we're going to be back and we're going to win. And we're going to have the next second half, or not even second half, second New England dynasty of the 2000s. So just get ready for that, okay? Because it sounds like you're already there. The one thing, too, I want to talk about, is moving back to kind of where we were, right? So the rookies in here, we had so many rookies start for us, which is why I still have hope. Kind of going back a little bit, I still have hope because when you look at the amount of rookies and how much they played, we ended up second in total snaps by rookies. And in ESPN's rookie value, which they say, excuse me here, which is kind of a mix of things. But, Aaron Schatz on ESPN back on January 14th basically had a little bit of a formula together that ranked, the teams and their rookies, saying how the top 4 teams have a massive drop-off, and New England's the 4th team. We got a lot from our rookies. Our rookies took the second most snaps in the NFL this year. So I'm really excited about that. I understand that obviously Will Campbell, Jared Wilson being the first pair of rookies to start on the O-line in a Super Bowl. But you know what? As Mike Vrabel said, as long as they learn from what just happened, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And then the last thing is, Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson there. Jordan Hudson showing up to a North Carolina basketball game in an Orchids of Asia shirt, bringing back what happened with Robert Kraft right before the AFC Championship in 2018 season, 2019. I don't want to get into that, but I couldn't believe when I saw that. A part of me thought that was AI, because I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. First of all, how do you get that shirt? Second of all, why? What have we done? What has gone on between Bill and Robert that this needs to be there, right? Well, sure enough, it just sounds like Bill's still pissed about the Hall of Fame, which I understand. I mean, Bill is a wildly sympathetic figure. And yet, the sympathy, he just pissed that away. Pissed it away. With this shirt. With the fact that Jordan had to go out of her way to go find the logo, find it on Etsy, do something, whether it was on a t-shirt or she bought the logo and then, had her mom steam it on herself. Why? Why would you do this? Everybody loved you. Myself included. I mean, don't get me wrong. Extremely grateful for the 20 years and all that. But you had this sympathy that never, no one ever felt in a long time for you. And then you had to piss it away with that moment. For what? What was that for? Just to stick it to Kraft because you think Kraft was the one denying you? Obviously, the two people who came out were more concerned about Ken Anderson, L.C. Greenwood, and Roger Craig getting into the Hall of Fame over you because they knew you would get in eventually. Eventually, right? Robert did not do anything. Tony Dungy is yet to come out. And Tony Dungy probably still hates your guts for, Spygate and all that nonsense. Which, again, it is total nonsense. Because it's not like we were using it or anything. But regardless, they just punished you. It's as simple as that. It was the stupid writers, the stupid voters, who looked at it and either one said that he's going to get in, which is why I'm not going to vote for him now, even though I'm going to vote for 3 players who, Ken Anderson is not a Hall of Famer by any stretch of the imagination. Roger Craig, and then L.C. Greenwood is a part of the steel curtain. And again, the thing I hate about this is no disrespect to any of these players. Honestly, you had good careers. You played in the NFL. You were a hell of a lot better athlete than I was. Like, duh. But you were able to make a name for yourself in the NFL. Phenomenal. I don't want to take away from Roger Craig getting into the Hall of Fame. That's not my point. My point is the voters for the Hall decided to go down these routes because this is the last time those three players could have a shot. They saw that Bill obviously was a Hall of Famer and will get in, or three, that they want to punish him for Spygate, so they're going to have him sit out a year. The fact that Robert has been here a number of times, at least, well, not in the finals, but semifinals, is one of those things where I'm like, why didn't he get in? Regardless, Robert didn't even get in. Robert didn't get in. You didn't get in. So why the hell are you taking it out on Robert, Bill? I mean, come on. I understand you're petty. Hell, I know you're petty. It's not hard to see. For all the years, right? He always hated the Jets. He hated the league. All of these things. Really held those grudges. Still. And not for nothing, Bill. You should have been fired. Yeah, you sucked. You were done. You were declining. You were bringing in all your friends to coach. Only Robert forced you to have Bill O'Brien, which isn't terrible, but, you couldn't decide. You hated our quarterback, Mac Jones. Don't blame you. But at the same time, a quarterback head coach need to get along. You didn't have that. You screwed him over with Bailey Zappi. You drafted like garbage, and now it's panning out. But I don't know if it would have panned out with him here, honestly. I don't think it would have. And so that's where I look at this and I'm like, you had all the sympathy in the world, Bill. You had it. People were on your side. You were a sympathetic figure for once in your damn life. And then you're like, nah, I'm going to piss all over that because I don't want to be sympathetic. You're too cool for school. Is that how it is? Fine. Then you know what? I don't care. I don't care. If next year you don't get into the Hall of Fame, I'm not going to sit here and whine about it. It's absurd. It's absurd that this is going on. Like, it's unbelievable to me how this pettiness. Yes, Robert posted that documentary. Actually, excuse me, this is the second time that he's a sympathetic figure, because if you actually knew all about the Patriots dynasty, you'd understand that a lot of that documentary on Apple TV was kind of garbage. While some of it might be true, a lot of it was. The biggest thing that pissed me off was the fact that the documentary tried to pin Aaron Hernandez and all of his stuff on Bill, and like that was Bill's fault that Aaron did all these things. It was stupid. I know. I get it. But to go out of your way and do this, why? What purpose did this serve outside of, the sympathy for you not getting into the Hall being gone? Honestly, did you think you were going to get away with this? Did you think that, you could get to sit there and say, hey, I just met her at the game. Like, we didn't drive there together. And she was wearing that shirt. I had nothing to do with it. Obviously not. I mean, it's stupid. She's what, 24? She was in high school when this happened, maybe? Like, come on. I want to say be better, but I know it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. It's unbelievable to me, But it is ultimately, it's still nice to see that this franchise that has stepped on the necks of NFL teams for 20 years, that has destroyed 6 dynasties, and somehow got to the Super Bowl with a brand new head coach and a second-year quarterback who had an MVP season. I know he didn't win it, but come on. MVP-like season that we are so in the heads of every single NFL fan base. And you want to troll us? Fine. Because you know what? We lost. Okay, big deal. But you weren't there. 30 other teams weren't at the Super Bowl. And yet you're still wanting to step on our grave? You might want to check that grave. Because just like Bruce Wayne when he was buried alive, yeah, that grave is empty now. So, like, Batman lives because he got out of it. And that's exactly what we did. We got out of it. And like I said, I've experienced worse losses in my life. I wasn't crying. I wasn't sobbing over this loss. Did it suck? Yeah. Obviously, you got this far. Why not win it, right? But you know what? We're back, and you know it. So get ready. 2026, the offseason, the draft. We're going to make some trades. We're going to get stuff done, and we're going to be back. And this time, we're going to win. So get ready, baby. All right, so that was your Boston Sports Summit. I really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. It's been a blast. And yeah, I mean, it's been a blast to do this show. It's been a privilege to do this show. And I wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you for that. But also, thank you for this opportunity. And it's been a tough couple of days, without a doubt. You lose the Super Bowl. But at least we didn't get our asses blown out like the Chiefs did last year. Just saying. So, all right. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Boston Sports Summit. I'm your host, Tim Barnett. Don't forget to follow me all along these social medias right here. Boston Sports Summit on Instagram, Boston Sports Summit on X, and then Boston Sports Summit on YouTube. Also, don't forget to check out the Grid Network. Bunch of great content creators, bunch of great sports guys. And while they wanted to give me a ton of crap, they were wrong. Because they're always wrong. But give them a follow, give them a like, give them a watch. So, all right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. And as always, God bless. Thank you.